Hey all you stupendous sharks and pups. My name is Mike and I'm one of the animal care specialists here at the Living Coast of Brookfield Zoo. And today we are going to show you our Pacific Coast exhibit and talk a little bit about the fish that live in this exhibit. So take a look. So you can see we have California moray eels. These guys have been in the collection for quite some time. They are about 23 years old, having arrived in 1997 at the building opening. California moray eels are really interesting animals. Eels in general are very interesting. They're famous for their teeth, and they have a lot more of them than you might even imagine. So they have their standard set of teeth that is in their jaw. They also have palatal teeth, which is teeth that exist in the roof of their mouth. So if they grab a fish or an invertebrate that they want to eat, it's going to have a hard time escaping. And then they also have pharyngeal jaws, which is a completely separate set of jaws that is in their throat that lunges forward and grabs their prey and helps pull it down their throat. So basically, if you're a small fish or something that they'd want to eat, you definitely don't want to get bit by an eel. They are also really interesting because they have a larval stage, so that's called a leptocephalus, and it's this really cool see-through larval stage that swims around up in the water column until it finds a place to settle down and live the rest of its life. But for the most part, they just like to live in rocky crevices, so you can find our two eels mostly in their little caves up near the front of the viewing window here. And their names are Olive and Neon, reflective of their different colors. So Neon is one that's a little bit larger and a little bit brighter green. Olive is a little smaller and more of an olive color, but they can range kind of from browns to dark colors and then over to like the bright greens. So the easiest animal to see, or the largest animal in the exhibit, are our leopard sharks, and we have 3 of them in this exhibit. We have Little Girl, Katrina, and Old Girl are their names, and they are also quite old. One of our older animals in the building is actually Old Girl, the leopard shark, and she is 26 years old. There are about 440 species of sharks in the world. And they are elasmobranchs, along with skates and rays. And what makes them unique is that they have a cartilaginous skeleton. They also have a couple of different breathing styles. So sometimes you'll see our sharks sitting on the bottom. I think all of them are up and swimming at the moment, but people will see them sitting on the bottom and they'll be concerned because they think that sharks need to keep swimming to breathe. But that's only true for a small subset of the 440 something species of sharks that exist in the world. So the ones that need to swim to breathe are called ram ventilators. Other sharks are buccal pumpers. They actually use muscles in their cheeks to help pull water over their gills and breathe. There are also a couple of different reproductive styles for sharks. So these sharks are viviparous, which means they give birth to live babies, and they can have somewhere up to 20 in the 20s in terms of numbers of pups that they'll have. So a baby shark is called a pup. Other sharks will have egg cases. So we have some swell shark egg cases here. So a lot of people will find these on the beaches, and they're called mermaid's purses often. So sharks and skates will lay egg cases, and they all kind of vary in size. They're called mermaid's purses, I guess, because they have these tendrils that you can sort of hold like a little purse. So if you ever find these on the beach. So some sharks and skates will lay egg cases like this. Within the egg, they'll have a yolk, and then the developing larva will grow in there until it gets large enough and then kind of is out into the world. So there's also a handful of different fish species in this exhibit. So the ones that you see that are kind of grayish here are called half moons. These are another fish that's been in this exhibit since the Living Coast opened in 1997. So they've been here for quite a while. They're called half moons really because of the shape of their tail. I suppose it's a little bit moon-like. they're a fish that lives kind of near shores. Most of these fish in this habitat are from like the coast of California, kelp beds and rocky shores in that area. So yeah, other fish in the exhibit. Let's see if anyone wants to come over. Of course, everyone's being shy when they're live on Facebook.
581 Garibaldi.
So we also have opali, which is giving us a little close up. It heard me say that none of the fish want to come over. So this is one that's been kind of recently added to the exhibit. So still small. A lot of California coastal fish are kind of going to exist in browns and grays and things, so they can camouflage with the kelp. So you can see a few of the opali along with the kelp fronds here. So you can see they're about the same color. So that helps them just to camouflage in there. Let's see. I was going to say, in contrast to that, we have the Garibaldi, which is maybe just going to come into view. So that's this bright orange fish, and this is the California state marine fish. And this is one of the most colorful fish along the California coast as well. And they sort of advertise that you shouldn't mess with them. They're probably one of the most aggressive fish in the exhibit. They can be very territorial. So males will stake out a small patch of rockwork and chase everything away, and that includes divers or other fish or anything like that. They also will lay their eggs in their territory, so it makes sense for them to keep other fish and divers out of the way. I don't know, we have a sheepshead in here, which usually she's pretty curious. Sheepshead are interesting because they're a type of wrasse, and wrasse are interesting because they actually change sex throughout the course of their life. So a lot of different reef fishes will do that. But the sheepshead start off all as females, and then as they mature, they become males. So the one that we have in the collection is probably somewhere between the two sexes at the moment. She has the coloration of the male, but she doesn't have like the big hump on her head yet. So hopefully she'll turn up at some point here. But yeah.
Why don't the sharks eat the fish?
So the sharks are well fed. We feed them several times a week. And I can show you some of the foods that we feed out here at Living Coast. So they get a variety of things, so all kind of restaurant quality food. They have shrimp, squid, herring, sardines, capelin, among others. So they're fed 3 times a week. They don't eat every time. This water is pretty chilly. It's about 60-ish degrees Fahrenheit in there. So things that they're cold water, or they're cold-blooded animals, fish are. So they don't necessarily have to eat a ton to maintain their metabolism. So here's the sheepshead, the one that's halfway between being a girl and a boy at the moment, or male and female, I should probably say more correctly. So the sharks are fed well enough that it's not worth it for them to chase down some of these other fish. The other fish in here are also kind of well chosen for being large enough to not be at risk of getting eaten by other animals in the exhibit. We also feed the sharks vitamins, so just like hopefully you guys do to stay healthy, we make sure that they get all the vitamins that they need.
What do the other fish eat?
So they get a lot of the same stuff, just chopped up into different sizes. We also have things like krill that we can offer them. So yeah, also gel diet, which is sort of fish meal and other things blended up with vitamins, just to make sure that some of the things that are a little too small to get vitamins hidden in their food will also be getting a balanced nutritional profile.
Why are the leopard sharks called leopard sharks?
Well, I think it's probably because of all their kind of spot patterns, although I don't know that it looks exactly like a leopard. There's another species of shark called a zebra shark, which we don't have here, that actually has a much more leopard-like pattern in my opinion, but when those sharks are born they look like zebras, and thus they're zebra sharks.
What's your favorite fish in this tank?
I would probably say the sheepshead is a lot of personality. She definitely likes to come out and say hi to us. She also has really cool dentition, if you can see her really sharp teeth as she comes up over. So, yeah. So I would say she's probably one of my favorites. The Garibaldis, even though they'll bite me when I'm diving in there, they're also really cool on account of being very colorful fish.
Do the eels ever swim or stay on the bottom?
They tend to stay in like the rocky crevices, but they definitely like to go for a swim. So when you guys are able to come visit us again, if you hang out for a while, they usually will swim every hour or two. So you may have to park yourself for a while to see it, but they definitely do swim around.
So is this a freshwater tank or a saltwater tank?
This is saltwater, so most of the fishes that live in here you'd find off the coast of California, maybe down along Baja, Mexico. A lot of them are kelp forest animals, but like I said, they can also live on rocky shores and such. And some of them, like the half moons, can be found many, many miles offshore, living pelagically, which means just out in the open water.
Are those holes on the side of the eel?
Yeah, they are. So that's actually how they breathe. So you'll see them open and close their mouth. That's them drawing water in, and then that's the spiracle that water comes out. And as it goes through, it goes through their gills, and they can extract oxygen from the water as they're breathing. So sometimes it looks a little dramatic when they're breathing, or maybe it looks a little mean, but they're not being mean. That's just how eels breathe.
Do eels have any predators?
It depends. When they're smaller, certainly any larger fish or shark can eat an eel, but as they become larger, they get up to about 5 feet in length. As they get larger, they have fewer and fewer predators, definitely.
And what do the eels eat?
Same stuff as all the rest of the fish. So they don't seem to love squid and some of the inverts as much, but they do love fish. Herring and sardines tend to be favorites, and we can actually call them up with an auditory cue. We bang some sticks together, and when they hear that, they know it's kind of like their dinner bell, and they'll come up to the surface, and we can hand them their meal.
Can leopard sharks be any other color?
They can have different spot patterns, so we can tell ours apart by their different markings when they come up to feed, so that we can keep track of how much they're eating. Their sort of feed response is an important indicator of animal welfare. So we know that if they're eating well and having a good feed response, then we know that they're probably in pretty good shape. If they were to go off feed for a while, we might start to get our veterinary services folks involved. But thankfully, ours have been pretty healthy. Leopard sharks are a pretty hardy type of shark.
How many eels do we have?
We have 2 eels in the exhibit, Olive and Neon. So Olive tends to live up a little higher, just out of view. This one's Neon that's kind of been on display for you guys.
How many gallons are in this tank?
This tank is 80,000 gallons. So it's pretty big. There are parts that you can't see. Behind this rock wall, there's like it looks like it's from The Little Mermaid, a little like cavern too.
What is the biggest fish?
I would say it's one of our sharks, Katrina. She's a little bigger than the others. They're more or less full grown. They're, like I said, Old Girl, which ironically is the smallest of the 3 sharks we have, is 26-ish years old. The others are probably in their early 20s. And they can get up to about 5 or 6 feet and maybe 70 pounds at a maximum weight.
How come there are sometimes penguins in with the fish?
Yeah, great question. So we do have a second penguin population that lives above this exhibit and has access to it. So they haven't escaped from their enclosure. We actually have 2 separate penguin populations. And I'm surprised they're not coming out for a swim, but maybe in the next couple minutes they'll come out.
How do you feed the fish?
It depends. So a lot of the fish are just broadcast fed, which means we chop the food up to an appropriate size and then throw it in the water and they'll come up and grab it. But the sharks will get fed off of tongs, so we have a window that we can kind of hang out of and hand them their food and make sure that everyone's getting a vitamin. And then the eels, like I said, they have another station up near the surface as well, and we can call them over with their dinner bell and they'll come over and eat out of our hands as well. And that way we can monitor the feed response of some of our animals as well.
And we do have a video of that on our YouTube channel.
Absolutely. So check out our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Also, if you guys are watching, you should throw some hearts out for Lynette, our videographer. She's been filming all of these Bringing the Zoo to You chats on Facebook and Instagram. So,
how fast can sharks swim?
It depends on the species. Leopard sharks are pretty slow inshore species. They can get bursts of speed. But then there are others like threshers and oceanic type sharks that can move pretty quickly.
Do eels have spines?
They don't have spines, but they have, like I said, a lot of different sets of teeth. So they have the teeth in their jaws, which are quite sharp and good for grabbing onto prey. Then they have palatal teeth, which not all of them do, but a lot of species do, which are teeth that live in the roof of their mouth. And then they have those pharyngeal jaws back in their throat that help grab prey as well and help them eat it.
How many kinds of eels are there?
There's probably about 800 or so species of eels and about 200 or so species of moray eels. So yeah, they can be found in pretty much any ocean or sea, and a couple that can live in freshwater-ish, depending who you ask.
Where can you find leopard sharks in the wild?
Again, most of these fish are from the coast of California, so these guys you can find, especially in Southern California, is probably like the center of their range. In the summer, the warmer months, you can also find these fish congregating in shallower waters in bays. So La Jolla is really famous for aggregations of leopard sharks and being able to kind of snorkel with them. And they're totally harmless, so if you're ever out there and you want to go snorkeling, I highly recommend doing that.
Do scuba divers come in and check on the fish or clean?
Mostly when we're in this exhibit, scuba diving, it is to clean. Like I said, most of our animals are trained to feed off the surface for us, so we don't have to dive for every feed.
Do eels lay eggs?
They
or
do.
give birth?
They most I don't know if I'd say most, but a lot of fish spawn pelagically, which means they'll go up into the water column and lay a bunch of eggs that are sort of buoyant and float into the ocean currents and then get distributed around. So they'll do that same thing, and then they have that really cool leptocephalus larva. So I would look that up. You'll see some really cool images of fish that look like eels but are super clear, and they're really awesome. An awesome larval stage that they have.
Aside from the eels and the sharks, do any of the other fish have names?
No, although maybe you guys can throw some name suggestions out for us. I guess I feel like we probably should, maybe especially for our California sheepshead, just because she's got a ton of personality.
Are there any babies right now?
Not at the moment in this exhibit, but we're always rearing something. We talked about jellyfish on one of our Instagram lives. We have a bunch of jellies babies that we're rearing in back, so there's always something having babies, but nothing in this exhibit. A lot of the colder water marine fish can be challenging to raise. So.
Let's see. Can you remind us how long the leopard sharks live?
Sure. So I think a lot of times we don't know exactly how long some of these fish live. We know that our oldest animal is about 26 years old. I think in the wild they probably don't quite live as long as they do at zoos and aquariums, but I would suspect maybe 30 or 40 years as a maximum for the leopards, but I think the longer we have them, the more we kind of know those types of answers. All right, well, again, my name is Mike. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Living Coast, and we are looking forward to having you guys come visit the zoo. But until then, join us every weekday at 11 on Facebook and on Tuesdays and Thursdays on Instagram. So thank you very much.